What is going on, everybody? And in this video, we're providing a state of the market and stock picks for December 13th, 2022. So that sounds like something you're interested in. Consider subscribing, as we do provide daily and weekly updates to get you prepared for the day and the week ahead in this glorious market. Now, going into tomorrow is a big, big day. This is something we've been waiting for core CPI, something essentially that's going to dictate 2023. It's going to dictate monetary policy on Wednesday, along with Powell's essentially forward guidance for 2023. So tomorrow will be a big day. The core CPI will come out at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. And we are hoping for continued inflation to continue to run down from 7.7. Now they are seeing a bigger declines in inflation compared to some other reports, and that's fine. That's great. That's dandy. But we have to really see how true that is. We did have the PPI last week, but is climbing up. Again, those numbers, you have to understand, are going to have a delayed reaction on the core. So you won't really notice that until coming into the next report. So being said, it's going to be extremely important that we don't start heading back the opposite way, obviously for obvious reasons. But the problem is if we find our way back into the eights, you're going to cause panic in the market. And also, you're going to essentially force the Fed to either one, continue with another 75-point basis move, or potentially run to a 100-point basis move if this is what comes of the report tomorrow. There is a lot of what if scenarios, but ultimately what I've always said is you have to see how the market is going to react. You're going to get an initial move, and then from there, it will normally dictate the direction. Again, if inflation continues to start running back up or start creeping back up, that's a cause for concern. Although, if things do come in line and things hold, and we continue to see a decrease in core inflation, and again on Wednesday, will monetary policy come in at 50-point basis move, and will Powell say that potentially they'll start dialing back on rate increases. Now that doesn't mean we've pivoted until he actually stops rate increases. Will we pivot, which I believe is still a ways down the road, a couple months out anyway. Again, right along with my thesis that things will officially pivot roughly around March, maybe even May, around that time period, sometime around spring. We could see that pivot, and normally what happens around pivot time is we do crash during pivots like that. So we have to wait and see how this does play out. But again, the core is going to have obviously a lot of weight. It's a very pivotal event. Pretty much what has guided us this whole year. There's been a lot of predictions halfway through the year, so these events didn't have as much weight until people actually started to realize that they did, and started to see core running away, whether that's in the used car prices, food, rents, which are all still major concerns at this point. And it all is going to be reliant on what the Fed does. Obviously, I mean, the inflation could be coming down. Maybe that doesn't stop the Fed from coming at a 75-point basis move. And so I'm saying there's a lot of different scenarios that can come and play out that could cause the market to correct. Again, I don't see, unless we start creeping back up on inflation, do I see us cause panic that could potentially break us to new lows. If inflation continues to come down, Fed raise rates, you're going to delay that fear down the road till something breaks. And my thesis is based around the consumer breaking and foreclosures, bankruptcies, all that across the board. Is that event that I am looking for to happen around springtime. But that again is heavily reliant on what the Fed continue to do, and heavily reliant on the core. Now the core Again, it can be interpreted however you want, but ultimately, what's going to be the seal of approval is going to be on Wednesday when that monetary policy comes out. So, and now that we got them back to back, you could potentially get a bigger move happening, and even understand that the market has been holding extremely well, no matter what the Fed and stuff have been doing, which leads me to believe that unless inflation gets back into the eights, again, the market is going to continue to hold, and we are right around the corner from getting into earnings mode and getting into some sort of rally. Again, Christmas rally is one of the biggest rallies of the year. We do get bigger moves on a normal market. It's not saying it's going to happen, but typically that's what does happen. And we have to also understand that just about a week away, we do have FedEx earnings, which is again going to provide insight into earnings for Amazon and Tesla and Apple and all those other big corporations. It's going to give you some kind of insight there. So again, we have to get through the inflation tomorrow. We have to see what's going to come. Again, I can go over technicals, and that would be great, which I'll go over the main one here on SPX. But again, you have to let the market digest what's going on, because you might gap down. We're going to sit flat until we get that report, and once we get that report, that is going to either break us up over here. Potentially give us enough gas to break the 4100. I think if things look good, I think you're just, even if we do get a good inflation, you're still going to need Powell to break us through that 4100, or we head back down. Again, 3600. I think we're not going to see 3600 unless we get back into the eights. And then at that point, you could potentially see a 100-point basis move if that is true. And then ultimately understand that we are seeing the destruction. People are starting to see the destruction, what these rates do. With in the current environment that we're in, and seeing that people charging their credit cards, all the things I talk about because of rate increases at this point. And then that's again where my shift is going to occur, again, unless the inflation does start to come, unless the inflation starts to creep back up. So tomorrow, again, really what I'm looking at, again, that 4100 is a big move. Again, if inflation drops a lot, which again, at this particular point, I'm not expecting it to come down a lot. I think it's going to come down more gradual again. It could get a nice pop up to the 4054, which would give us roughly around a 60-point move. We could potentially even go for the one, but you're again really going to need Powell to fall in line with that. If Powell does fall in line, if everything falls in line, I think we got a strong possibility to break out of 4100. Again, if there's any chance that inflation creeps back up into the eights, I could see us coming back down. Again, depending on how bad it is, again, it all depends on where that needle lands. If that needle is at 8.5, that's pretty bad. And I could see us revisiting 3,600. Now, again, for some reason, if it's over 9, I don't see it jumping that quick, that fast. But if it starts creeping back up, again, that's going to be a cause of concern, because that's going to tell the Fed that there's just nothing is what they're currently doing isn't working. And so that's going to cause them to have to hammer more rates, causing more people to get laid off. Again, you already got a very beaten down consumer at this point. So you're only pushing that can further down the road. So again, watching that. So bottom level, watching that 3,900. If that breaks, again, I think we could have a pretty decent fall down to 3,800. So you got about almost 100-point move in either direction. It really just depends, again, where that needle lands tomorrow, and then it'll be even fueled more with whatever happens on Wednesday. And then obviously you have Powell on the back half of the day at 2:30. He'll be fielding questions. So there's a lot of what if scenarios that can happen tomorrow. So just be mindful of that. Bitcoin is remaining to hold the 1,700 very well, especially after the X. We also got FTX drama as well this week, which I believe it starts tomorrow. So you might see a lot of volatility in that, depending on what gets uncovered there. Again, big thing to watch on the dollar is that 105. It is hugging that 105 line, and again, rightfully so. It wants to know what the core is. Again, if core starts rising, you're going to see this dollar rip back out, and none of these technicals are going to even matter. This thing will go. And this thing could potentially even go back to all-time highs. So you have to be mindful of that, and something that is very, very much possible. So watching the dollar tomorrow. Tesla. Now, Tesla's been beaten down a lot. It is holding roughly this 168 very well. We got earnings mode coming up, and so that's what I'm kind of thinking. If things fall in line, Tesla could potentially reverse and start really running back up. And so I do like Tesla to the upside. Again, my concern with Tesla is if his successor is announced during essentially earnings, which gives us some time, but I think it will still allow us to get in a rally mode because they did put out great numbers. Now, they weren't expecting great numbers in the future, but that's not saying that they haven't got some already, so they could still lead to a very good earnings. But we have to see how this plays out. So, but nonetheless, we definitely want this to break essentially the 166. If it does, Tesla could go for a pretty big dive down to the 150. Then you got bigger support way down at the 120, which is not great. But again, I think you need a bigger catalyst for this thing to start selling off that bad. Again, if inflation gets bad, this thing could really start sinking. So just be mindful of that. Otherwise, if things do get good, you want this thing to break above 185 and hold above 185. Again, also, the 200 has been a real pain. It has attempted to break it twice and nothing. If this does find its way back up to 200, it could be a strong possibility it does break out. I guess, again, if everything falls in line and we start getting earnings mode, could potentially get it back up to 240 going into earnings. So kind of that's what I'm watching there. Apple, again, very strong right now. Been waiting this thing to drop down to 136. Again, if things don't fall in line tomorrow, could potentially see it there. Otherwise, look for this thing potentially break out. You really need to break out above the 148. A daily solid candle above the 148 would be great for strong breakout there. BA again, still floating around that 189 ceiling. Is just hard for it to break. But that's where it's currently sitting at. Again, value has been very strong. Banks have been very strong. Even though they're getting massive layoffs, people are just seeing more profit that the banks could make through everything with just cutting everybody. So again, you don't want the bank to break 130. Again, this thing could drop pretty good. It doesn't really have much support until around 120, and then a stronger support of the 112. So kind of watching that for JPM. Goldman Sachs been sitting on support right now. It breaks essentially the 357. Could be a strong possibility with a 327. Again, they have some little road bumps here for support, but not great. You have stronger supports at these particular levels. That's why I highlight them, and not these little road, essentially speed bumps. Not saying that they can't bounce off of them, but more than likely it will head to the other zone. BAC. BA Sage has been an absolute wreck since the CEO came on and said negative GDP growth. So we'll see. It could be a higher low here. Again, it's all going to be dictated on what comes tomorrow at 8:30. So again, I don't want to make this video too long. You can talk about a lot of what ifs in your interpretation of it, and that's fine. That's great. But ultimately, again, it's going to depend on how the market interprets it, how Powell is going to interpret it, and what the next move is there. And luckily right now, we have the core, and then on Wednesday we'll have monetary policy. So we'll have them back to back, which will be great because we won't have to wait and guess. We will know, and then kind of have about 2 weeks to let everything digest and getting the earnings mode and kind of see how 2023 is going to come in. So again, very interesting to see what happens. We'll have to take it easy in the morning. Go from there. Again, a lot of times that first move is incorrect move. You got to give it about an hour, which gives us about an hour for the market to open, and then go for there. Again, if we creep back into the eights, I'm going to tell you it's just not going to be a good sign. So I think will be panic. Although a couple different times I thought we would have jumped and we didn't. So again, if it's a dramatic move to the upside, it's going to be scary as far as inflation is concerned. Again, I don't think it's going to be enough to cause a new low. I think we'll still need a black swan to play out to be able to do that. And just be mindful, we're pretty much already in a depression at this point. Whether you want to believe that or however you want to define that, that's essentially what we've been in. And so I do expect things to get worse before they get better. I expect a couple more months of things getting worse, and then we'll find a bottom. Whether this catalyst that I've been talking about plays out or not, I think it's definitely going to be tested. It's going to take a lot for the consumer to come out of this, and I honestly don't know how they're going to. So that's where it's kind of where I'm waiting to see. And sometimes you just need everything to fold, destruction, demand, and then hopefully the consumer can come back and be confident again to start allowing the market to recover from that point. So, and I think that's going to be at some point around spring or summertime next year. Again, about 6 months out, we'll kind of know from now, after tomorrow and Wednesday, kind of see what 2023 will bring. So with all that being said, I appreciate you. Go ahead and drop a like button. Till next time, I'll see you guys later.